Hi, my name is Bill Clough. I'm the president and CEO of CUI Global, a company that engages in a number of different activities in two different companies that we own. The ticker symbol is CUI, and today I'm going to take a few minutes to run you through the company and some of the benefits and some of the things that we're doing. I think you'll find that this company is a little different than most microcap companies you find in this space. We're different in the sense that we have right now around $70 million in revenue a year. We net around $6 to $8 million in earnings a year. We're sitting on close to $30 million in the bank in a effectively debt-free company, which is quite unique in the microcap space, I believe. We'll start off with this corporate presentation and give you an overview of how we got to where we are. We're quite proud of the progress we've made over the last several years because we have taken a company which 5 years ago was a pre-revenue company with no real revenues, no earnings, and assets primarily comprised of ideas. And we've taken those ideas and that company and really done quite a good job, I believe, in building now a hard brick and mortar company with 150 employees and some real earnings and revenues. As I mentioned to you, the company is CUI Global. The Nasdaq symbol is CUI. If you go to the second page, that is the SEC disclaimer. We are a publicly traded company on the NASDAQ. Therefore, we have certain responsibilities. And of course, I will be making some forward-looking statements in this presentation. The next page is entitled Business Overview. And let me take you through basically the two companies that we own and the two companies and how they operate. The first company, if you go to the next slide, is a company known as CUI Inc. It's based out of Tualatin, right outside of Portland, Oregon. It is a company that we acquired about 5 years ago in 2008. At that time, it was doing about $19 million in revenue. We bought it and frankly acquired a whole lot of debt when we bought it. We had a plan though. It was September of 2008. We were planning on going out, it was May of 2008. We were planning on going out in October, November to do a big equity raise and pay the debt off and move on with our business. Unfortunately, as most of you know, in September of 2008, Lehman Brothers collapsed and we found ourselves without an equity market. So what we did is put our heads down and really drove the core business that we had acquired. We took it to $26 million in revenue in 2009, $37 million in 2010, $39 million in 2011, and last year we did $41 million in revenue. So we took that electronics company and really drove it to not only pay down debt, but to create revenues and earnings. The company itself is a 24-year-old company, quite experienced and quite recognized in the electronics distribution industry. It has a broad range of products. Those products we'll talk about in just a few minutes. But again, it is a company that has been respected as a distributor, in essence, of products, and now is quite well recognized as a high-tech innovator in the power supply area. The second company that we just acquired actually, if you go to the next slide, is Orbital Gas Systems Limited. Orbital Gas Systems is the largest integrator of gas products, natural gas products, into the natural gas industry in the UK. It's based near Stone in Coldmeets, Swinnerton, which is about 3 hours north of London. It is really a jewel of a company. It was created in 1984. It's been family owned up until last month. We acquired it, quite frankly, for less than one-time revenues and about 2.8 times earnings. It does routinely around 13 to 14 million pounds in revenue a year, so about $24–25 million, and routinely pockets about $6 to $7 million in net profit. So again, a very nice little company. Much like CUI, it has a 29-year history. It's very, very respected in the natural gas industry and brings a whole lot of expertise to the table in an area that we really needed expertise because of the technology that we had surrounding the natural gas measurement of energy in the pipeline. If you go to the next slide, you'll look and see what the product line is with CUI Global. CUI Global, as I mentioned, is an electronics company, 24 years experience, broad base of products and of customers. Over 51,000 separate customers, as a matter of fact, over 20,000 separate SKUs. So a big base of customers and a very large base of commodity-based parts, largely. We have customers from Microsoft to Intel to GE to Philips Medical to Diebold. We also have two very important customers, one that we just obtained and one that we've had for almost 20 years. Those are our two big distribution partners. The number one is DigiKey. They do all our small order fulfillment, which allows us to maintain 40% gross margins across this largely commodity-based business. And the other one is Future Electronics, which we just brought in at the beginning of the year. And Future, unlike DigiKey, doesn't handle small order fulfillments. Future really focuses on OEMs and getting our products in that OEM pipeline. So again, this is a nice business that's growing at a rate of somewhere around 12 to 15% year over year. It's a business that I think anyone would be proud to own. And when you overlay the Orbital Gas Systems on top of it, you see how exciting this opportunity is. Why Orbital? Well, we acquired about 2 years ago a technology called the Gas PT2. The Gas PT2 is a very unique method of measuring gas energy content in the pipeline. For those of you who don't know, it's a very important element of gas and gas billing to know the energy content. Gas is not billed like water. It's not billed by volume. It's billed like electricity. It's billed by energy. How much energy are you delivering to the customer? That energy is called BTU, or a British thermal unit, and it's comprised of two elements. One is volume, and the other is energy content. Volume historically has been very, very scientifically measured, very quickly, very accurately, on a second-by-second basis. Energy content, on the other hand, has been measured the same way for 60 years. Very archaic technology, very expensive, very high maintenance, and very slow. In fact, while a flow meter will measure on a second-by-second basis the amount of gas the customer is getting, current technology takes up to 40 minutes to measure the energy content of that same gas. We have now changed that. If you go to the next slide, what you'll see is two pictures. On the left-hand picture, you'll see a standard, really high-end energy metering station as it exists today in the current standard. And what you see there is a pipeline on the far left with a probe coming out of it. That's the vertical pipe coming up, actually goes high so you can see it above the mountain range. Next to that, you see a gray square box, which is a gas conditioning unit. That takes about 8 to 10 minutes to decompress the gas that's coming out of that pipeline at about 80 bar, to warm it up so you don't have liquids dropping out, and then to transport it along that cement path that runs down the center of the picture to that shed that you see on the right. That shed contains a gas chromatograph, current technology. That shed takes about 20 to 40 minutes to actually analyze the gas and report back to the operator what the energy content is. All the material you see in that shed is needed to operate that gas chromatograph. It needs carrier gas, it needs calibration gas, and most significantly, it needs a chemical engineer to calibrate it every 36 hours. So almost every day and a half, you have an employee out there, driving out there, to either replace carrier gas or calibration gas, or to calibrate the instrument itself. That installation, which is an installation, by the way, that Orbital does, would cost around $250,000 US to install, including all of the civil work, the cement laying, the pipe laying, all of that. It's about a 5 to 6 week operation. 1 week, of course, is used just to stabilize the gas chromatograph. So it's a very difficult, very expensive procedure. You see our response to that on the right. That box you see sitting on that pipeline is our gas PT technology. It sits right on the pipeline. It requires no carrier gas. It requires no calibration because it's solid state and doesn't require calibration. And I was present in Mexico City when that exact device was installed on that pipeline. It took not 6 weeks, not 5 weeks, not 4 weeks. It took a total of 40 minutes for two not particularly skilled Mexican laborers to decommission that pipe, bolt it on the top of the pipe, recommission it, connect the communications cables, and you had an accurate metering station. That is unheard of in the natural gas industry right now. It is the only device of its type. There is no competition. How do I know that? Because we've been tested by some of the biggest, most powerful natural gas players in the world. In fact, 14 of those players, all in response to a bid put out worldwide by those natural gas entities for any technology that could be used to accurately measure flow and energy content in gas. And we were the only device in those 14 tests, the only one that passed and was qualified as a Class A device. So at this point, we have a very unique opportunity. It's a window. How long will it remain open? I don't know. There are obviously very smart people trying to solve this problem, but right now we have the solution. And that's the key to this partnership with Orbital. If you go to the next slide, What we had, and that next slide is 3 photographs. One on the left is a probe, looks like something that would stick into a pipeline, which is exactly what it is. The picture in the center is 2 cylindrical objects that are the analyzers that we actually own. And then picture 3 I'll talk about in just a second. But understand that what we acquired 3 years ago before we bought Orbital was the center picture. We had the very, very fast analyzer. We could analyze gas in less than 3 seconds. The problem was we were still waiting to get the gas out of the pipeline about 10 minutes, very much a slowdown of the process. At about the same time, totally coincidentally, the Orbital invented and patented the device you see on the left, the probe. Their probe will pull gas out of that pipeline in less than 2 seconds. I met with the president and CEO of their company in Houston, Texas, about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, right after I had acquired the analyzer. He told me about his probe, I told him about my analyzer, and we realized there was a marriage made there. And what we developed was what you see on the right, that box. That box is connected to their probe, has our analyzer and gas conditioning in it, and that box, when it's closed up, is what you see on that Mexican pipeline. So instead of 40 minutes, instead of $250,000, instead of 6 weeks of installation, we measured the gas in less than 5 seconds, for $55,000 with a 40-minute installation time. Again, we think a dramatic opportunity. Why is it such a big opportunity? If you go to the next slide, you'll see. Well, that slide is entitled Enormous Market Opportunity and Potential. Just briefly, what you see there is there are 305,000 miles of pipeline currently reported to be in operation in the U.S., 210 separate companies with over 30,000 unmonitored sites, sites where you do not monitor energy content of gas, not because the gas companies don't want to, and not because the regulators don't want to, but because there's no way to economically put a gas chromatograph on those. We believe you can put our device on those. In Europe, 220,000 miles of pipeline, over 20,000 unmonitored sites, same thing applies. And then if you look at new pipeline construction, where you really have an opportunity to capture all of the monitoring sites, there are 119,000 miles of pipeline currently under construction worldwide, with approaching 18,000 separate offtakes that we would apply to. That's one market we're attacking. The other market is the gas turbine market. And again, just briefly, gas turbines are those large jet engines, basically, that supply about 40% of the world's electricity now. They are very large, very complex, and very expensive, running from between 18 million to 200 million for the large ones. 60% of them are owned and or operated by GE Energy. So they are a company that's quite interested in controlling those turbines. One of the things that GE identified early on is that those turbines are very sensitive to changes in gas quality, changes in energy content in gas. They are burning literally 5 to 10 pounds of natural gas a second. So you can imagine the amount of gas that is. I don't know what a pound of natural gas looks like, but 10 pounds a second means they're eating up a whole lot of gas, which means if you're taking 20 to 30 minutes to assess and analyze that gas, you might as well not bother, because those machines are already through that gas and long gone before you can make the changes that will make them operate more efficiently. What GE has tried to do to overcome this problem is set blending stations as much as 40 and 50 miles upstream from the turbine, then try to calculate what's happening in the downstream run, and then tweak those machines, tune them on the fly. When they heard about our technology, GE immediately took 2 of those devices, which they've now just bought the second of those, and are testing our device not 20, 30, or 40 miles upstream from the gas turbine, but actually 30 meters upstream from the gas turbine. And because we're providing the information so quickly and so accurately, they're able to almost real-time tune those turbines. What they've found so far up testing is that they are able to decrease the emissions by as much as 40% from those big turbines, and more significantly for them, they have reduced maintenance costs by as much as 50% and increased lifespan by almost 100%. When you're talking about a $200 million machine and you can increase the lifetime by 100%, you're talking about something that really works and works quite well. In the world right now, there are 54,000 of these gas turbines operating. About 30,000 of them are operated by GE. So again, we see this as a huge opportunity, especially when you consider that $55,000 price tag for that box that sits on the pipeline gives us close to 45% net operating margin. So for about every box we put on the pipeline, we're making about $25,000 US. Or if you put it another way, every time we sell 100 boxes, we put 10 cents EPS to our bottom line, which makes it a very exciting piece of business. So again, if you go to the next slide, what you're left with is two companies with some very exciting technologies. Orbital, on the right, has the gas PT device and the Iris device, which I'll talk about in a minute. CUI has, as I mentioned to you, some very advanced power systems, Novum and Solus. We are taking to market in partnership with Ericsson. And without belaboring the point, I can just tell you that those devices are very unique within the power supply industry, but they are a longer-term investment. We think that it's 18 months to 2 years before we see real traction with those devices. So that's why we're focusing right now on gas PTI and Iris. Iris, for its part, is a very interesting system. If you turn to the next slide, you'll see a photograph there of the control station that is used by National Grid in the UK to control the entire nation of the UK's gas pipeline system. You see there a very complex system of gas and metering stations and compression stations. And if something happens right now today in that room, that technician you see there will get an alarm, and that alarm will tell him that there's a problem at one of those stations. It's very non-filtering. It's simply an alarm that tells him there's a problem. He doesn't know exactly what the problem is. He doesn't know exactly what to do to correct the problem. So what he has to do is get on the phone, whether it's 2 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and call a technician who is sent out to wherever that station is that's having the problem. Here's what they currently confront when they go out there. They go out and they see, if you go to the next slide, this basically DOS system. It is a system that they see when they walk into that test station, and they will look up there, and when they run a diagnostic, what they will see on that screen, that little green screen that you see, is a DOS printout. You have a problem, there is a problem, a default at valve 17 or valve 15. Very non-dynamic, very difficult to deal with. They then have to go out to valve 17, figure out what's wrong with it, do what they can to correct it, and if they have the part, fix it. If they don't, they got to go get the part and come back. Again, a very non-dynamic system. Here's what Iris does. We have installed Iris on 32 pumping stations and compression stations in the UK, and it has worked incredibly well. When the technician gets that call that there's a problem at the pump station, he doesn't have to drive anywhere. He can literally sit down with his laptop, with his iPad, with his iPhone, and using a password and a protected internet-based system, he can pull up the next slide. And what you see on that next slide is a diagram, an accurate, very accurate diagram of the pumping station that's having the problem. You notice that he doesn't see a DOS printout. He actually sees a series of lines that indicate the gas pipeline, along with little bow ties that indicate what's going on with each and every valve. If he taps on one of those valves, if you go to the next slide, he'll get a printout or a pop-up, just what you see in front of you, which will show that valve, along with 3 things: control for that valve, so he can open it or close it, history of that valve, what's been going on with it, and configuration of that valve, which is a diagnostic that will tell him what's going on right or wrong with that valve. If you hit the next slide, he can then literally open that valve or close it. He can diagnose what's wrong with it so he knows the part. He can even look at that diagram that you see underneath there. He can shut off certain valves and reroute the gas. So now instead of going out there at 2 o'clock in the morning, not knowing what's wrong and not knowing what part he needs, he can go out the next morning, saving on overtime and obviously trips out to that facility, with the part and fix it at, in essence, his leisure. A very different, very dynamic system. We've been contracted with the UK to do 90 of those systems across their entire grid. We ultimately hope to do as many as 390, which is their total grid. The cost of a system is £100,000 or about $150,000. With about a 40% net operating margin. So it's a very high margin business for us. And we think it is, like gas PT, something that we're going to be able to take a big advantage of. If you go to the next slide, then what you're left with is 2 very dynamic companies. On the left, CUI Inc., 24 years experience, 50,000 unique customers through 50 countries. Very advanced with a very global footprint. On the right-hand side, you see Orbital, 29 years experience. Again, very extensive engineering experience, a very nice model of both revenues and profitability, but totally focused on the UK. When you combine the two, their products, being Orbital's products, with CUI's global footprint, you see why we think this is such an exciting opportunity. So again, that's where we believe the investment opportunity lies with this. The next slide simply gives us a little background on who and what we are. I will mention just in the lower right-hand side, and you can take your time looking at these. This PowerPoint presentation is on our website, by the way, which is cuiglobal.com. But the one point I would make is the lower right-hand side, when we acquired Gas Systems, Orbital Gas Systems, we also acquired Andy Ridge, their managing director. He has almost 30 years experience in the gas industry, vice chairman of the ISO committee that sets standards worldwide for gas. He's a quite renowned, very respected engineer within the natural gas industry, and we believe that he brings the credibility we've needed to penetrate the market with the gas PT device. So in conclusion, if you look at the next slide, the investment highlights, I think, become quite obvious. This is a very strong company, very, very strong balance sheet with a quite exciting future ahead of itself. I would invite you to, if you go to the next slide, either call or write me or my CFO, Dan Ford, if you have any questions. And it's been my pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you for your time.